Last week at AIC, I was an armory counselor, and during that week, I saw a huge problem with the way armor works at AIC. This video is about explaining that problem and potentially posing a solution to it. Hello and welcome back to another video on the Ickerson channel, and today we're looking at what I have most righteously dubbed the armor problem. It's more specific than that, and I'll get into that now, because really what I mean by the armor problem isn't a problem with armor. It's more about a problem with the construction of armor, because I got to see a lot of that and be a part of a lot of that last week as an armory counselor. Essentially, what I mean by the armory problem is that kids have a very hard time making their own armor. Last week, I made a bunch of armor with a bunch of different campers, which is kind of the problem because, I made armor for campers. What you're seeing now on screen is essentially all of the armor that was made last week. I don't even know how many chest plates and gauntlets were constructed. At least 5 or 6 chest plates and 20 some gauntlets or something, maybe less than 20, but quite a few. And the thing is that you'll see in all these videos is that the construction style and the design are exactly the same from armor to armor. And essentially the reason for that is because I'm the one that designed all of that. All of these designs are pretty much carbon copies of the set from the video I made a set in a day. I've just been reusing that exact same design. Every kid who comes up to me and says, I would like to make some armor, I'm like, all right, I'm making you this. Because that's just the one that I know how to do very well. It's pretty durable design. And by that, I mean it's easy to put together and it's rather fast. And you don't have to do as much measurement as you would for a much more complex design. But that's the issue is I'm taking away the executive function from the campers. I'm not really allowing them to make stuff of their own volition. I'm making it for them. And during that week, I saw a lot of campers just sort of standing around and waiting waiting for me to help them, waiting for me to make stuff for them. And that can't possibly be fun. The whole motto of Cardboard Camp is that you should be having the most fun possible in everything that you're doing. And if you're just waiting for some counselor to get over there and then make stuff for you, that can't possibly be enjoyable. I know if I was a camper, I would not enjoy that. Heck, my experience was so. I was having a conversation because I was all of the people who wanted armor kind of got sent my way last week because I was talking with the other counselors and I realized that I'm probably the person who's made the most armor out of anyone ever affiliated with AIC. That set I made in a day was my 14th personal set for myself. 14 full sets of armor across 10 years of building. I've made so much different stuff with a lot of different styles. I've learned a lot in all those different styles that I've made because I made a lot of mistakes and I did the work and put in the time and I made a bunch of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. I really loved doing all of that. The whole process of building and designing is what I found enjoyable about that. And so, making that for a camper, even though they might end up with a better set of armor, isn't the point. The armor isn't the point. The point is them feeling excited about something that they've created. Because I know personally, without the ownership of me making my own armor, I probably wouldn't have kept returning to just a random live action roleplay camp for so many years now. Had it just been go there, play a couple games, capture the flag, and leave, I wouldn't have loved it as much as I currently do. And I want to inspire the same sort of love that I have into all the campers who want to make armor. And so if I'm just making it for them, I'm cutting off their ability to get hitched in the same way that I did all those years ago. So essentially what I mean by this, the actual problem is that the construction method for swords and other weaponry in the armor is very, very, the process is robust. It's very simple, same way every single time. And that isn't true of armor. Essentially, the way that swords and other normal things are made is it's 5 really durable steps that all of which can be done by the camper. So the first step is essentially designing the sword, or putting it together in your head, picking out the template, drawing it out, designing it, thinking of what you want it to look like. Step 2 is tracing everything onto cardboard, actually making it life-sized and what you want it to look like. You cut out all the pieces. Step 3. Step 4 is fitting everything together. And for swords, that often includes going and getting a piece of bamboo, but it's no one comes to you and gives you a piece of bamboo. You go off and find a piece of bamboo, and you ask the person to cut it to the length that you specify. And so, unless you include like the actual person who's using the little saw to cut the bamboo into the right pieces, like it's extremely camper oriented. Then after they fit everything together, you just tape everything in. You tape the bamboo to the sword, and then you tape the whole seams of the sword. Every single one of these steps can be done by the camper, assuming they're knife certified. But if they aren't, they call over a counselor, just like they go over to a counselor for the bamboo. They go over to a counselor, say, hey, cut this out. And the counselor goes, oh, okay. And 30 seconds later, they have the piece cut out. Every single other step is done by the camper. A camper can go from an idea to a sword in like 45 minutes, all by themselves. And I love that. In that way, you can make whatever you want. Whatever type of sword you desire can become a reality just by sheer force of will and the space that we've provided for that to be available. But that is not true of armor. And it's for one kind of understandable reason, and it's just that it's more complex, and it's the process by which armor is built is not nearly as robust, and it's not nearly as kind of simplified as the process by which swords are made. And because of that, the counselors are there for pretty much all of the steps. In armor making, the counselors pretty much tell the campers which templates to use, or in the case of Armor a Lot last week, I mean, all of the gauntlets until the very end where I created my own template for a gauntlet. I drew out every single one from memory. I just tell the camper to take some measurements and then use those measurements to concoct a template from memory. And if there isn't a template, you just draw it out. And then if the camper is knife certified, you have them cut that out. But if not, then you cut it. And so you're already a part of 3 steps. Then, after you have all these cut out parts, it's really hard to put armor on yourself to tape. And so the counselor will also be involved in the 4th step of fitting everything on the camper. And then they'll also be involved in the 5th step of taping everything on the camper, or fitting it, or attaching it all. And so, like, where in there did the camper actually get to make armor? Like, when did that happen? I kept feeling this over and over again that essentially the camper wasn't making armor, they were getting armor made for them, which would not be something that I would have wanted as a camper, and it would have taken away fun from me. And so I want to provide a space for that fun to be available for the campers. And of course, I know perhaps there are some campers who are not necessarily confident enough to try to make all those decisions themselves, but that's literally your job as a counselor. Your job as a counselor is to instill the security and confidence in all of your campers to feel that they are able to actually make stuff. That's your whole job. Your job isn't to make people armor. If you wanted to make people armor, you would go about it a much different way. But similarly, and this is my favorite analogy in this video, there's this whole thing about how counselors are, in no uncertain terms, allowed to rule over their team for capture the flag. You're not allowed to order your kids to do anything. The game is theirs to win or lose. You should not involve yourself with that. It's the point of the game isn't to win the game. Your campers don't need to win. Your campers need to fight and be self-advocative and feel self-deterministic. Whether they win or lose, that's up to them. That's the whole point of the activity. The point of the activity isn't to get drugged to victory by your counselor. Similarly, the point of armor making isn't to get a piece of armor from your counselor. The point of armor making is to make the armor, because that's what it's enjoyable about the activity. And that's just not what is happening currently at AIC. It's armor's getting made for people, and I don't think that's the way it should be. So I can't gripe on about this whole problem without actually proposing a bit of a solution. And I have an idea in mind, but it's going to require a lot more flushing out. And I think that'll be perhaps one of my last couple gifts to AIC before I escond forever. But ideally, it currently the camper in armor making is the assistant to the counselor, but it really should be the other way around. The counselor should be the assistant to the camper. The camper should be able to do almost every step themselves and then tell the counselor what they need assistance with. So, like, hey, I need you to do this one short task and I'll do all the rest. Okay, cool. Not the other way around, where the counselor's doing everything and then the counselor's like, oh, I could have the camper run and go grab a roll of tape. No, the counselor's the one going and running and grabbing the roll of tape, and the camper is the one actually using it. Like, that executive control should definitely be owned and controlled by the camper, because the executive control is the part that's enjoyable. But you can't drive a car without knowing how to drive a car. And so as counselors, the thing that we need to do is teach the campers how to make armor, not make the armor for them. And I don't really want to have to explain the science of armor making to every single group, because like less than a quarter of the kids will ever make armor. But whenever a kid does want to come up to you with armor, there needs to be a set of tools, a set of like pieces, ideas that each counselor knows and has that can give to the camper, and that those ideas will allow the camper to use them to make a piece of armor for themselves. And the counselors will help with whatever the camper wants, but ultimately the camper's the one making the armor, because that's what's enjoyable about the activity, is making the armor yourself. And essentially all that needs to happen is we just design those tools and then disseminate them to the counselors. Yeah, essentially that's it for me today. Thanks for watching. Sorry about it's a bit of a rant video, but I really do think that this is kind of a big issue, because whenever you're removing the fun from an activity, you're literally doing exactly the opposite of anything that would be desirable in a summer camp. And at AIC, literally our whole motto is pretty much anything that the camper wants to do that will bring them fun, we should try to allow them to do. And the best part is that we get to bring activities to them that they wouldn't have even thought of by themselves that will bring them more fun than what they would have been doing otherwise. So teaching kids how to make armor and getting them excited about it is pretty much as amazing as you can be as a counselor, in my opinion. So yeah, that's for me today. Thanks for watching. Best of luck, and I'll see you tomorrow for another daily upload.